I'll never forget it. Talking about this ghost right now, I'm getting chills. Both of the hairs stand up on our arms, and it just feels like something's there that shouldn't be there. Hi, my name is Logan. I'm an intuitive, a spiritual healer, and a medium. In the great Halloween spirit, today I have a bunch of creepy ghost stories from when I was a kid. You're gonna wanna stay tuned for these. Now, before we start this video, no ghosts or spirits from my stories can come haunt you, okay? Have you ever just been somewhere and thought, I feel like I'm being watched, but there's no one here? Perhaps a creepy building after midnight, or in the dark, and there's just a feeling you can't shake. Something or someone is there. I'm being watched. A lot of us may have had that experience before, and some of us don't believe in ghosts and spirits. But I can tell you, that experience is not uncommon or unique. But time and time again in my life, you just have the feeling that something is there. There might be a reason why I've experienced a lot of ghost experiences as a kid, and my mom, for whatever reason, had friends who used the Ouija board. Disclaimer, I don't recommend using a Ouija board. That's the one divination tool for sure is off limits for me. And I'm a spiritual practitioner. I've cleansed people's spaces and auras and removed spirits before. Yes. So she had tons and tons of stories. I never heard them as a kid, but we shared our own experiences later that matched the chaos of that. So I know a thing or two about the spirit world. Now let's get to the creepy stories. They heard the boot steps. They could actually see the apparition, the ghost. All the way back when I was 1 year old, we lived in a townhouse that used to be where farmland was. There would always be noises in the house. There were 2 stories. And on the second story, you would always hear what sounded like boots. But my dad would always say the famous line, "The house is just settling," which no one who lived there believed. I'm 1 year old. My parents went out for a couple of hours, and my brother and a friend that he had were watching me. And it was either just before or the same night that my parents went to a psychic. And I think for them, this was supposed to be entertainment. My parents go to this psychic and they say, there's a ghost in your house. This ghost is a farmer. Which, makes them a little anxious because they're hearing the footsteps every day or so. Well, basically, we were about to move out at this time. Apparently, the farmer ghost was talking to the psychic and told her that she wanted to follow us after we moved, specifically to watch over me, the 1 year old baby. But that's not even the end of the story. That night, while I was being watched by my brother and his friend, they heard the boot steps again, and they claim that they could actually see the apparition, the ghost, come down the stairs and look like he was in the flesh. They saw a farmer. They saw a farmer with boots. And there's really only 2 directions you could go, left or right. So he came down the stairs and then looked at my brother and his friend, and then looked the other way and walked into the kitchen and just disappeared. So it's not like there was a man in the house that they could see or anything, or someone had broken in or anything. No. This was the manifestation of the supposed apparition we were all experiencing. And my little 1 year old self, I had a little baby blanket. While his friend hid in the closet, I took my baby blanket at 1 year old and I threw it over my head. So even at that age, I knew something was going on. So it turns out that on this farmland, there was some sort of plane crash or fire that wiped everything out at some point. And so there was actually a farmer who had been burned alive, unfortunately. And as far as I know, we left that place and the farmer spirit stayed there because I've never perceived a ghost that was a farmer ever since. But that's just the beginning of my ghost stories. You're gonna wanna stick around for the others coming up that are more intense. This house had a lot of rooms to it. And there was one room that I honestly wouldn't go into. My brother could not sleep alone. At the age of 4, we moved into one of those 20th century homes built in Minnesota. It was a multi-story home. There was a small attic that was kind of unfinished at the top and a basement at the bottom with a well that had a cistern that went deeper. It's like you had a second basement. None of us could see what was down there. So, and in this big house, I was only 4. I have a couple memories. I watched Dora and I did feel a lot of anxiety in this house for a 4-year-old. I have a brother who's 12 years older than me. And when I was 4, he was living with me. We were living in the same house that was haunted. And my brother had a separate bedroom, but he would always sleep in my room because he was always feeling like he was being watched. This house had a lot of rooms to it, and there was one room that I honestly wouldn't go into. It was like the office room, and apparently I told my family, there's someone in there, and they're Little Bear. I did watch the show Little Bear as a kid, so I think that was my reference point. It was probably a ghost or a spirit in that house that was a child, but whatever was there, my brother could not sleep alone. And that was the only place where that was really the case. Now, it kind of sucks to have to live in a place that looks creepy and actually is creepy, but I survived at the young age of 4. So that is nothing compared to the next stories. There's definitely something about this experience that rattles me. Every time I looked in the hallway door in the middle of the night, I saw an outline of a figure. At the age of 7, my family moved again, and we moved into an apartment. At this point, my brother was over the age of 18, so he moved out of the house. And I liked the apartment we lived in. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment that was pretty spacious, and I got my own room for the first time. And I even had a bunk bed, which was cool. But for some reason, every day that I lived in this apartment, and I only thought this when I was at home, I just had the thought of like, we lived on the first floor of the apartment complex. So if someone wanted to break in, they could break the window, break our balcony door. There's a million things that could happen, right? That's the anxiety of living on the first floor anywhere. But for some reason, when I lived in that apartment at the age of 7, I always had anxiety that I would somehow be murdered there, which is not something I had ever before, and it's not something I've ever had since. And I have lived in a place that had first floor windows since then. There's definitely something about this experience that rattles me. This is definitely an experience that I feel like firmly I experienced the most on my own for the first time. And when we lived at this apartment complex, my brother lived in a separate apartment. Someone was actually shot in one of the lobbies, not mine. There was a little bit of stuff going on that made it seem unsafe, but I had these thoughts of anxiety about being murdered before that happened, and that only like added to it at the age of 7. But for some reason, I would wake up every night in the middle of the night, and I've never done that since. Like, that's not a pattern for me every night. I would wake up every night, and my hall door, the door to the hallway, would be cracked open, because my parents wanted to keep it open, I think, to make sure that I was asleep, and I would always look up. And if you see people's auras, or you see their energy, you might see like an outline of energy around them. Every time I looked in the hallway door in the middle of the night, I saw that. I saw an outline of a figure. It's not like an apparition or anything or a face, but I just knew something was there, and it was watching me every night, every night. And talking about this ghost right now, I'm getting chills. I definitely know or feel like there was something there, and it would definitely creep me out a lot. If I had to guess, because I am an intuitive, that ghost was someone who was potentially murdered. Because sometimes, you know, before spirits or ghosts cross over to the other side, they stay in our realm, or they stay around our realm. And I think this is a perfect example of the type of spirit that stuck around based on something traumatic happening. If you have experienced anything like seeing a ghost every night in the middle of the night, feel free to contact me at lotusandthesnake.com and get a spiritual consult with me. Let's talk about what's happening. All right, on to the next story. And I had trouble sleeping, the apartment, and feeling that anxiety and paranoia. At the age of 8, my great-grandfather passed away in his later 80s. After we got back, because he had lived in a different state, I had that same experience again, where I was seeing the outline of someone's energy. And by this time, we had moved to a new place yet again, and we were on the top floor this time. I still had my own bedroom. And I was about 9 or so. We get back home after my great-grandfather passes away, and I see it again. I see the outline of a person, of an energy. And I think it scared me because of my previous experience with the apartment and feeling that anxiety and paranoia of like getting murdered for some reason, which I did not have seeing the outline at the age of 9 of whatever this figure was. But I was pretty confident this was my first encounter with a dead relative. This is someone who passed away that was coming to say goodbye or check in on me before he went wherever else. Now, I still had a lot of anxiety about it, and I had trouble sleeping, but I don't think it's because of that experience, honestly. I really think it's because of my experience before of waking up in the middle of the night. Now, I wouldn't do it every night here. It's just this like really small period after my great-grandfather passed, and I had a sense of peace when I told myself it really is him, and he is just trying to check in on me and say goodbye. And I can only imagine, as ghosts and spirits are in the realms outside of our perception, I can only imagine what that experience is like. You want to see your family if you're in this realm, but then you don't know how they're going to perceive you. And I think most people don't even see or perceive things. It's a lot more subtle, right? Like they might come through an animal, they might come through a symbol. But for me, that was a pretty direct connection. Now let's move on to my final ghost story for this video. Hopefully it's the best for last for now. I saw the strands of her hairs come up. Well, in that same place where I had seen my great-grandfather, another year or two had passed. And again, after 3 months, I, started falling asleep again, no problem, had a lot of less of anxiety, could sleep by myself. So it's not the place that was the issue. Well, around the age of 10, my godmother temporarily stayed with us because she needed a place to stay. And while she was doing that, she watched me sometime. Well, there was one particular night, and this is the only time this experience happened, but we both could pick up on some kind of energy that was going on. Now, she, I believe, is a Catholic because I remember she had her cross, and she was definitely touching that, feeling very in need of that in that moment. She also tended to be an alcoholic, so I'm attributing the energy around this situation to that. It's really more about the negativity. We were just hanging out, just some night that she's watching me. As we're both sitting there, we're picking up on some energy that's in the room all of a sudden. And things get really dense and they get really cold. And both of the hairs stand up on our arms, and it just feels like something's there that shouldn't be there. There was this huge dictionary. Think those large encyclopedia hardcover books we had, on a ledge somewhere. And it was not sitting on the edge or anything. It was pretty firmly on the shelf. Basically what happened, the dictionary came flying off the shelf and smacked the floor. Now, because nothing else had happened aside from the energy we were feeling in the room, we didn't know what to make of it, but we knew something was there. We both got a lot more creeped out, a lot more goosebumps, and felt a lot colder. I'm feeling a little bit of it now, all of a sudden. And so we went to the kitchen because the book had been thrown in the living room on the floor. I'll never forget it. I sat down in a chair in the kitchen because she just wanted to calm me down. Right, we were having this experience, but I'm a 10-year-old kid and she's not trying to make it seem creepy or anything. I remember, pretend you're me sitting in the chair. She was sitting there with her cross, and I watched her turn around. She had long hair too, and I saw it. I saw the strands of her hairs come up to about here. And that is probably the creepiest physical manifestation of any energy I've ever seen up front. There was a lot of static electricity in this experience. And so I saw her hairs come up, and then I saw them go down. So whatever was there probably touched her or was attracted to her. Well, needless to say, the experience freaked us both out, so we decided to leave the apartment for that night. And again, I came back, I lived there for quite a few more years, and I never experienced that ever again. Those are just a few ghost stories from my childhood, a couple of little nuggets of interesting, creepy stories. If you can relate to any of these stories, you've experienced a ghost, you feel like you're being watched, something's happening, and you might need some help, contact me. at lotusandthesnake.com and subscribe for more ghost stories, energetic videos, esoteric topics, and so much more in this space. Thanks for watching.